A warm welcome back to Beyond the Norm podcast. I am delighted to be back with you. It is May 2026, and this podcast has been a long time brewing, and I've been dying to share this one with you. It will include some of the research that I've done in the last few weeks with the talk that I won for the Emerging Speaker Competition of the Year with the Professional Speakers Association, and the one that I went on to share in the UK for the semi-final. So much research went into that it is something that means so much to my heart that I am dying to share it with you. This podcast is going to be on signs, coincidences, and what your heart already knows. This one is for you if you are starting to wonder what's it all about. You know, that real midlife question of like, why now? What's this about? What's going on here? There must be more to this world than just this humdrum working, this existence of just survival all the time. If you are and have been a high achiever always in your life and you've always been doing things by the book, and suddenly you're wondering, actually, I don't know if that's the thing that's given me joy anymore. Or you've had an experience, whether that's losing somebody you love, or there's been a sudden end to something, even if it's a friendship, or you started to notice things like signs and you don't know what their meaning is yet and what's going on. It's also for those who are really skeptical and are thinking that anything around this subject matter is a faith-based discussion. It's absolutely not, nor is it always spiritual. I think I'm going to go into the science of some of this as well. But it has a part of your body has a deep knowing that there's something more to just what we're actually noticing and seeing, or maybe we've lost our observation skills. This is also really relevant if you're working in a high pressurized environment, you're already a manager or a senior leader, and you are losing a bit of yourself with each moment that you stay in this challenging system. But for now, you're happy to be there, but there's something else that you want. This is the podcast for you. In particular, this episode, I hope that you can consume it whether you're walking, whether you're driving. I always give the caveat that my voice has a resonance that sometimes puts people to sleep. So if you're driving and my voice is already doing that it's a little bit hypnotic, don't listen to this when you're driving. Equally, if you really want to listen to this, don't bring me to bed with you. Possibly a voice that lands in a lot of bedrooms for all the wrong reasons, and people fall asleep and then they miss it and they have to listen back. So the ideal place is probably in your sitting room while you're doing, or your kitchen doing tasks, or you are doing some gardening. I had a lovely message once from a woman that I spent the whole afternoon with her in her garden. Or else you're just sitting down and enjoying an afternoon. You might want to play me on dual screen. It is also on YouTube and Spotify video. If you enjoy seeing me as I speak as well, that might be something that you might like to do differently for this episode. So a huge thank you to all my loyal listeners. Many of you have been here a while. Some of you are new. Some of you might have heard me speak this year in 2026 at different things, and you're intrigued to know a little bit more about systemic coaching and how it could help you in your life. And this episode will have lots of goodness in that as well. So sit back and enjoy, and do let me know at the end of this episode. Please comment, share with somebody that you might feel that would really help them. And always, I really welcome all your reviews, whether that's on Spotify or Apple, or comments or shares on YouTube as well, and mention it in your stories on Instagram. All of that goes such a long way, and I'm always so grateful for anybody who mentions my name in rooms where my name would not normally be in. That is what's keeping my business alive, and it'll be 3 years this summer. So I really, really appreciate you, and enjoy this episode. So it was September or October 2024, and I was out for my usual walk on my beach near me, which is Merrion Strand, right by my house. And it was many of the nature walks that I take most days, But this one had an extra twist in that I had asked for a sign. And the sign, I hadn't been explicit on what the sign was. I was just really curious. I wanted to ask my mum in particular, was this business going to work out? I've had so many days of disillusionment and WTF, what am I doing? Am I meant to do this? I always thought it was an experiment for a year. I find myself 3 years in, and at that stage, I was over in a year and a half in business, and I was really keen to, be reminded that I'm not alone. I live alone, and some days I often say to people, I'm not lonely, but I can feel lonely. I love my own company. I love working for myself, but I do spend a lot of time on my own. So as a result, I asked for a sign that day from my mom, and in, I would say, a split second after asking for it, and this one, like, there was no timeline between me asking and the sign showed, and that's not always the case. But a ladybird landed on my phone. And in that moment, I was so blown away because not only it wasn't just like a fleeting moment, it stayed and it moved onto my hand and it crawled around my hand. It came back onto the phone. Um, and because I did have it landed on my phone, I used my phone to record the ladybird on my hand. And in the spur of the moment, I decided to record a piece for TikTok, of all things, because TikTok tends to be a little bit playful and doesn't not so polished. And I just recorded that this something had just happened, and I couldn't quite believe it. Um, and it was one of my more viral posts that went out there, and I had so many private messages from people about their loved ones sending them signs each day or when they were struggling, and that it really grew my attention to why am I talking about this more, because this is something that in the last few years, and in particular since my mum died, that I have become really, really primed for the signs. And whether that's a robin, and we all know the symbol of the robin, when robin is near, they say a loved one is, who's passed is also near. And that's a really common one. But there's so much more to this. And I wanted to get into some of the science behind it, what's going on, but also what else is your heart not seeing in each day. And I talk about the heart, talk about the three brains: the head, the heart, and the gut. We are made up of three systems within our wider system that holds intelligence, holds decision making, holds our way of being in the world. So often we only exonerate the head and we say head office, headquarters, head count. Everything is related to the mind. We talk about the mindset. And often we are forgetting a core center of our being and our way of discernment, a way of knowing, a way of being intelligent, and that is our heart intelligence. Also, our gut is primed for acknowledging the things that cannot be seen or said, but we have a deep knowing. This episode is really going to focus on heart intelligence as a way of being, and not just within ourselves, but including the heart of an organization, the heart of your business. You know that person, and it might even be you that will be considered the heartbeat of a team or a company or even your department floor. Know what is it about your heart that might need a little bit more resourcing to remain as you and not get bruised by many of the systems that take advantage of the kind ones, the empathetic ones, the ones that care that a little bit more or have a different way of being in the world. So whether it's the ladybird, or in Irish tradition we know all around the idea of the magpie, is another great one that we see in our sphere every day. If you are, and I'm very, very blessed where I live, I am surrounded by some nature in the front, and then I'm on possibly one of the busiest roads in Dublin, but beyond that I have the sea. So I can see birds, and a lot of birds. So I'm privy to seeing either one magpie or two or three or four. We know for one for sorrow, two for joy, three for a boy, four for a girl, right? It's a rhyme that we would have said. As humans, we're always meaning making, but our ancestors would have done the same. So everything I'm talking about today is less around that idea of this is something new. This is something that our ancestors did Their whole lives they were attaching meaning to nature, to whether it was the stars, whether it was something, that they saw, or birds, migratory birds that were flying over, or the way the sun shone. We think of Newgrange, all the things that they had to, because they didn't have the technology, that they had to attach meaning to, whether there was going to be a good harvest or a good summer. And all of that shaped how they lived and existed in the world. And the more and more technology that we bring into our world, the less smart we are becoming, even though the irony is that we've been told that what we're holding is a smartphone. And AI, this idea that artificial intelligence, which is really ironic because artificial intelligence, or AI, is made up of vast, vast quantities of information. So is information intelligence, or is intelligence somewhere else? And where do all your intelligence centers live? So this idea that we operate in a field. So this is the systemic angle. You and I are living in the universal field. And often within that field, there are symbols, resonance, signs that we can attach meaning to. But they're the things that we're seeing. And often case we're not seeing or not experiencing life the way our neighbor is next door, because of how they have been reared, how their beliefs or their patterns or their thinking is shaping their reality. So we talk about our reality, and the word personal reality, personality, is not fixed. So how we can change our way of being, we can change our thinking, we can change our discernment, create a whole other reality of what we're experiencing. The adage of whatever you focus on grows. So this is really, really, really important when it comes to meaning making in 2026. Excuse me. So when it comes to this question, I want you to start reflecting on what if you're not missing signs because they aren't there, but because you've moved too far from the place in which you can receive them. So that idea of, are you in the right state of being to receive the signs, as opposed to maybe your state of being is in survival and you haven't that time or space to be present, or that time to come into your heart to wonder, what am I noticing? What am I not noticing? What am I seeing and what am I not seeing? The work that I do illuminates part of the field. It's like a torch or a spotlight on one facet of our work lives or our home lives. What is it that part of us that we're not seeing? So if it's a case of, I work with somebody who has a conflict with their manager, and when we do, a way of seeing the unseen is a thing called a constellation. Constellation is a 3D map that reveals a lot of that unseen, whether that is present day unseen. We work on revealing the things maybe from our ancestors. I recently worked with a woman and we looked at her grandfather, her uncle, both who have passed, and her son. They all had the same name. And we were looking at themes and resources from each of these three generation of men who were a huge part of her seeing herself as whole. So the granddaughter, the uncle who saw all her intelligence, her son that admired her as the woman she is. And we looked at the patterns through a constellation in terms of things that represented each of those men or boys that could give her information for what she needed next in her life and her work. So that's what a constellation reveals. Everybody has a unique constellation. No two constellations can be the same. When I work in a group context, it is often, let's say I was in a group and somebody else was facilitating me, and I chose Mary as the person that would represent my joy. And it's not joy in general, but my joy. And she decided, because she was representing my joy, this is a felt sense, this is not acting, this is not role play, but my joy. And I wouldn't be necessarily telling her, but she got a sensory information in her body that my joy was seated because it wasn't alive right now. So the facilitator would help elicit from Mary what she was experiencing so I could understand more about where my joy was at and what it might need to become more alive. So that's a real small example. In family constellations, which my work is a organizational version of, would be somebody might represent your mother, somebody might represent your father, a sister, and that's what family constellations involves. And the person is again feeling into the information that they're getting from this field, from the universal field, on what they're feeling. Again, this is not acting. This is not anything like that. They're literally picking up on information. Sometimes it can be really, really subtle. It could be phrases like, "I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm doing here." Um, so it's really subtle, but for the person that needs the information, it's often the information that has been illuminated, and some form of sign or information that they can bring some more meaning into a place that they didn't really know about. So the systemic field holds the unspoken, the excluded, right? So it's often the thing that has been left out that in a constellation gets included in, and maybe it's unresolved. So that's why I work with people who's maybe have an issue that has been going on for years in a company, and nobody knows why or what's going on. And my work comes in to help really unravel what might be unresolved and unseen that needs to come up for it to be healed and move on. So the work I do is a derivative of Bert Hellinger, who was the man behind Family Constellations. And the group that I work in the UK, Coaching Constellations, and John Whittington in particular, is the organizational version of that. So that's why I work so often with teams. I work with individuals in relation to their working world and what they want to do to earn money, and how we can be so loyal to our family's way of working, our even previous managers, that we treat them like parents or older brothers and sisters, and how we work with them, and how all those dynamics are information and signs on the patterns maybe that we might need to let go of, or we might need to embrace more of to help us. So even when I was talking about the ladybird and the magpie, the ladybird in Irish is called Bóín Dé, which is, I think it's the cow of God. And these creatures are like, a ladybird is really, really sacred. If you look at the symbolism behind ladybirds, they're messengers or they're threshold beings. So in the time of Bealtaine, which is April, May, which is, we've just hit into Bealtaine now in May, it we is that perfect threshold, that thin veil. Samhain and Halloween is another thin veil where we're moving between the other world and this world, right? So our ancestors knew that if they saw a ladybird, that we were transitioning into a new season, into summer. So it brought often a gift or a wisdom with it. The other one in the Irish tradition that we hear would be really symbolic. And again, our generation aren't hearing them as much, but because we're not primed to hear it, was the banshee. So the scream of the banshee just before somebody, or as somebody passed over. Many people would claim that they were visited by a banshee. And these are traditions in our ancestral line that we are, I think, in this reinvigorating, and this year that we've gone, the years of astrology that we're going through at the moment, that we are looking again once more to what our ancestors always knew, and how even like the act of queena, which, so it's like the keeners, the criers, like all these traditions are coming back now. We're becoming full circle. We're so overexposed to technology. We're looking for something different, and this is everything I'm speaking about lives in the heart intelligence. So we know our sense of belonging, our sense of traditions comes from that heart place, and how we are regulated enough to receive the information, whether we want more signs, whether we want to experience life differently, that it starts being present for our heart. So a big part of this is around heart intelligence, and this is not a metaphor. As much as it sounds so romantic and lovely to talk about heart intelligence, this has true scientific fact. So the HeartMath Institute. So if you're not familiar with the HeartMath Institute, I'd really encourage you to check it up. I have actually, speaking of technology, I have a technology that can measure when I meditate. I attach it to my ear, my pulse rate that measures my overall heart coherence at an optimum time, whether I'm breathing correctly, whether I'm in that really state of presence. And the HeartMath Institute has investigated the heart as its own intelligent system. And it has figured out that it has 40,000 neurons in the heart. Of course, the head has billions more, but it's not how many, but it's what these neurons do. So, in my research for my talk, which was all around leadership in the age of AI, what would your heart do? I did a lot of research on that the heart ultimately sends more information to the head than the head sends to the heart. So the question would be, why so often are we obsessed with the mind when it's the heart that is the first organ in our body that comes alive, that holds a frequency, a wave? It is from this place that we are creators and creator beings. So HeartMath Institute have this ability to measure our electromagnetic field beyond us. And within the human, that extends 3 feet beyond ourselves. So, you know, those mornings where nothing is going right, you're stuck in traffic and it's raining, and every red light you get is just nothing is going your way, and you've decided today is going to be a shit day. Hey presto, you get to the office, you probably stood in dog poo on the way in, or if you like me, one time I fell on a banana skin after coming out of an osteopath. I'm not joking, that actually happened. And I was definitely in a state of mind of being a victim of like everything not going right. If I was to measure my electromagnetic field that day, it might be less, or it's not as vibrant as when I've been present, I've been in nature, I've had a break, I've done something that really restores my heart. If you were to measure my frequency in electromagnetic field, it would be absolutely different as a result. So it's ideal, like you're broadcasting just like radio waves, and the I suppose the being with the biggest electromagnetic field is actually a horse, believe it or not. I think I've spoken about this before, certainly in the move into the fire horse season, that the horse has this vibrational frequency that you know when you're in the presence of a horse that there's something different, and it can calm you down, or equally it can bring you into more energy. So everything has electromagnetic field rev. Anything that has a heartbeat, anything that's in nature, has its own electromagnetic field. And ultimately, the work that I do is about coming back to your heart to restore your optimum electromagnetic field, to resource you, to bring yourself into a new frequency, to create a different reality. I heard somebody recently, we obviously, we're speaking about the time. So we have two wars, we are in a fuel crisis, which I always think is really ironic when they talk about energy crisis, because we are all, if the world is in an energy crisis, how is our energy right now? But the question around somebody who was obsessively watching the news around the fuel crisis, and hands up, I was probably one of those people, worried about, how would I get home, or how would I operate in the world. And I'd heard of somebody else who had to go to Galway at the peak of the whole thing, and they never listened to the news. They absolutely didn't give a shit. They didn't even know really what was going on. And in their universal minefield, it's like it wasn't even happening. So when they set out in their journey, everything went really smoothly and they got there absolutely fine. And the same person in the same group that was going to the same location, who had obsessed about the news, got blocked at every junction, took hours to get there, and their personal reality was totally different. So it begs the question that my neighbor next door, even though we live in the exact same space, is having a totally and different parallel universe to the one I'm in. And it's coming back to our state of being, our coherent heart. What is going on for us? What are the signs? What are we recognizing? What are the experiences that we're having that changes our reality? So this is about experiencing what is it like in our own heart office as opposed to head office. What's going in within the four chambers of our heart. um the more time that we spend walking into our four chambers and really, really, really listening, and like I can imagine as I close my eyes what is going on in my heart center. I have a beautiful image of my own ruby crystal that is magnified, that's swirling, that is getting bigger and bigger. That when my heart is truly at its best, that I can magnify a resonance, that whoever is listening to this podcast can feel absolutely seen and heard like they've not been seen or heard in years. That I know when I'm at my optimum best, that anything that comes my way and me entering the personal reality of other people that are listening to this, that has the ability to absolutely change lives. So how for you can you remember your own heart and what's going on in those four chambers of your heart? If you're feeling ungrounded, if your place and your, something is wrong and you can't name it, that there's something going on, that's the sign, right? That's the first sign. That's the signal. That's the body telling you the information that this is off. So it's often case we can't explain, we can't rationalize, we can't put words on it. We just have this knowing that something is off in ourselves, and the body knows it before the mind. And that's where we start paying attention. It's not to figure out what the next action is, but more sitting with it, acknowledging, yeah, there's something not right, I don't know. My most recent example of that is, I've spoken about this on Instagram, is me knowing deep down something was up with my hormones. I went through my first menopause. Well, I went through my first menopause when I was in my 20s because I was put into an artificial menopause because of endometriosis. But my second menopause was at 43, and I thought for the first years I had it nailed. I had it figured. And then last year, all bets were off. I had definitely a few health challenges and things changed. And I thought I had it rectified around September and October time, but I never felt right in myself for a few months. Look, I was working away, I've done some of my best work, but there was a part of me that knew, and I just wasn't feeling it. And I was eating unnecessarily. I was doing some mad things that it was just so not me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And it was only when I actually took the time to actually reflect on what was going on, and I spoke to some like-hearted people who it was like, actually, I think I have this figured out. I have an excessive HRT. I have too much of this stuff. This is not what I need. So the body, once I listened and paid attention, it was giving me the signs and the signals to do something about it, but it wasn't always obvious when I was busy and I wasn't being present and I wasn't being grounded. As much as I intentionally meditate and do breath work, which was more, I was ticking a box as opposed to really experiencing it and coming back down to terra firma, which these last few weeks have been, and back into my podcast again, which is my happy place. So it's all that, like, what hadn't I been noticing? What had I been ignoring? I had a gut feeling something was off and a heart knowing, and yet I didn't do anything about it because I hadn't made the space for it. So what are you not listening to right now in your lives? What are you ignoring that needs some of your attention? So one way to get into the place of coherence and really practice this presence, to see more, to experience life more, to really change your personal reality, is the coherent heart. And a coherent heart starts with breathing. And as a master breathwork teacher, you've heard me bang on about the benefit of breathing, but this is probably the most truest form of, when you're doing this breath work, how your reality can change, and everything changes from this place. So coherent breathing is all about equality. So an equal inhale and an equal exhale. And often it's a an inhale for 4 and an exhale for 4. But it can go to 5, it can go to 6, and go to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. And the divine breath is like 2 breaths in a minute. But this one is probably 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And it's training your mind to bring yourself back into this place of equality, a place that your heart, you're mimicking the gentle heartbeat, a very, very, very steady rhythm. And it is bringing your attention to your heart when you're doing it. So our lungs and our heart are so intertwined. Yes, they're two separate organs, but they so work mechanically together, but they're also actually living in the same space together. Another sign, a very, very common sign when somebody has lost a loved one, is often the first place that gets sick is often a cough or a lung infection, because the heart is broken and it's impacting the lungs around it. Really, really, really common. People who might be experiencing a summer cold at the moment, but it's particularly gone into your chest. What have you lost recently? What are you grieving? Or what are you anticipating? You could be in anticipatory grief. What do you expect to lose but haven't acknowledged yet? The heart and lungs are very, very similar. So I was going to do, again, just paying attention to those who are driving. I'd rather you not do this, but if you have the capacity to be in a safe place, sitting or lying down, I'd love for you just to maybe do a few practices of what a coherent breath will feel like. And I'm just going to take a drink of water before we start. So I invite you to just do 3 simple reset breaths before we do anything. So 2 feet on the ground, sitting or lying down. And the invitation is to breathe in. Just a gentle inhale and a gentle exhale. Again, a gentle inhale. And on the exhale, just to letting go. One more. Inhaling in. And on that next exhale, can you release the shoulders and allow your body just to settle? I'm going to do a few rounds of that coherent breath. So taking an inhale now for 2, 3, and 4. And an exhale through the nose or mouth for 2, 3, and 4. Keep going now, inhaling in for 2, 3, and 4. And exhaling for 2, 3, and 4. Well done. Let's do 3 more. Inhaling together, equal in and equal out. Equal in and equal out. On the next one, let's see if we can go to 5. Inhaling in for 2, 3, 4, and 5. And letting go for 2, 3, 4, and 5. And just come back to normal breathing. Let everything settle. Placing the hand on your heart now and checking in with your heart. Noticing maybe more calm. Even the hand on your heart might elicit that you truly do care what's going on in your heart. Whatever the emotion that comes now, just notice it and welcome it in. Even if it's bittersweet. Well done. That is just a 3-4 minute practice just to come back to stillness, come back to your breath, come back to your heart coherence. If I were you, just for depending on what time of the day you're listening to this, can you remain curious on what happens as a result of just doing 3 minutes of breath work? What changes in your day? I have an absolute curiosity to me as a person. It's why I end up doing this work, is because I'm genuinely curious about people, but I'm also curious about what happens. And in my 20s, I was probably obsessed, in my early 30s, with seeing mediums and fortune tellers. So I was always dying to know what would happen next. And now I love days that I go into town and I might have an appointment. I might be meeting a client or meeting somebody for a cuppa or doing some jobs or even heading out for a walk. And I often now start with the question of, who am I going to meet today? Who do I need to meet? Or they might need me. Who am I going to meet, or what's going to happen? So it's really, really having that curiosity, or what are the signs that I could see today? um, what will be the signals or the information that I might need. So often we talk about, coincidences as, oh my God, you'll never guess who I met and what and such. And I met a fabulous friend this morning and she talked about being in Australia. She was over visiting her daughter, and the people that she bumped into and her daughter bumped into when they were all together. Like absolutely incredible coincidence. You're on the other side of the world, and that is something that has happened to me a lot in life. In fact, it happened to me quite recently. My semi final for the speaking competition ended up being in Leeds, and my client is in Leeds. The This is a UK competition. It can be in any city in the UK. Big country, huge population. The final of the building was 200 meters from my client. 200 meters apart, where the competition was on, where I have been in with this client many times this year. Um, so that was already coincidental, or is it a coincidence? That's what I love asking. And it was a Friday afternoon, my final was, and Friday during the day, because I know the area really well, I knew there was a Pret cafe, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to go for a cup of tea and a little snack, and just take a moment. And one of my clients, it was a Friday, nobody works in this building on a Friday, and I happened to just be walking into the Pret to get a cuppa, and out one of my clients walked. Like, the chances of it happening in that exact same second at that time, she was absolutely locked in her work. She had just come out to get an early lunch. It was quite early, it was like 11:30 a.m. or something in the morning, and she couldn't quite believe it. She was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh," she's like, "Oh, you've the competition." We had a great chat, and it was absolutely who she needed to see on the time, but also I needed to see, to remind myself that of all the cities in the UK, that I'm 200 meters from where I normally am. Like, I'd never, up until last November, I'd never been to Leeds in my life, and yet I've been there 4 times now, and one of the times was through the competition. That it's quite bizarre. And then to run into my client on a day where there was absolutely no one. The same absolutely amazing person said, you should go for a walk over to our High Line, which is like converted railway. So it's not quite London, it's not quite Paris, but it's our Leeds High Line. Go and have a look. And as I walked down, I saw this mother of ducklings, this 8 ducklings following a mom. And I ended up having this like rescue operation where I had to ring a wildlife trust to come and save this mama and her 8 ducklings, because the birds were circling around them and they couldn't get access to the river. And all because I'd met the client who had set me off in this direction, which was such a lovely diversion into a day that I was already kind of worried and stressed about the competition, that there was a whole other reason why I ended up being in Leeds to rescue 8 ducklings. Who knows? But the whole thing was like, if my mind was to rationalize, it was weird, it was bizarre, but at the same time, it was like my meaning making, or the signs were, I am loved, life is abundant, life is good, regardless of the competition, life is good. And I'll be back in Leeds again. I've no doubt I'll be back in Leeds once more. So it's just so interesting when you're curious on, who am I going to meet? What's going to happen today? Sometimes you bump into somebody that you haven't seen in a long time. That times we think of somebody, God, we haven't heard from them in ages, and how are they doing? And all of a sudden they text you. That is a sign that this is we are energetic beings. We hold a frequency, and that frequency can travel infinite through time, through space. And it's really, really powerful when we start thinking like that. But when we force it, it doesn't happen, right? So this is about keeping things, as Joe Dispenza calls it, like a little bit goofy, a little bit light, a little bit like not holding a tight grip, and it's kind of like the manifesting. It's more a feeling or a sense of like, I don't know what I don't know. Show me the signs, show me what I need to see, reveal what needs to be seen. um it's starting to notice, um, when you are starting to tune in, what are you starting to receive? What are the things? I often find myself, going to, again, search, or whether it's Google or AI, like, what was the symbol behind such and such? Again, for the information, not for the intelligence. It's only my intelligence that can start discerning what I've seen, right? So we have a knowing, but we often just doubt it, and we need rational data and figures to back it up. When that's a lot of the work I do with clients. A situation arises, and they want to understand their own intelligence, and not my offering, but like eliciting what part of them trust or didn't trust, that gut feeling that something was off, and that you didn't belong there in the first place, and you always knew, but you were pushing through it. So there are some of the things that being present in our heart and doing daily breath work or daily time in nature can change so much. So the more and more you get into this place, the synchronicities start increasing. And um and they are more synchronicities than coincidences, definitely, in my mind. That your trust in yourself starts increasing, so you see more of them. Your capacity to notice them starts increasing, so you start creating space to start noticing them. One of the and this is the science, right? This is known as the RAS, the Reticular Activating System. So this is the mind. Once we start, that idea of whatever you focus on grows. If I said you're going to see a red car today, and you see 10 red cars in the next hour, well, if you were listening to this driving, or you only notice Kildare Regis for the next 2 hours of driving, um, it is this active idea of that if we're paying attention to what's being observed, we start seeing it. I think for anybody I know that's listening to this that has gone through fertility treatment, and while you're going through something like that, all you see is pregnant women. That's all you notice. And I certainly, for all the years where I didn't or couldn't have children and I really wanted to, that's all I saw for years. Or the years I used to pine about being single, on a Sunday, which was often my loneliest day, where my vibration would be lower, all I would see was couples. So it's about taking this RAS, this reticular activating system, right, that we have as a humans, that we have a bias, and changing the story. Like, what do we want to see? What are the things we're focusing on? I'm currently obsessed with dogs because I really want to get a dog. So I'm noticing dogs more and more. My content has changed on Instagram. It's always very dog heavy, but now it's gone like to like they're selling me products all about dog stuff. So our algorithms are even getting in on this, right? Because it's whatever we're focusing on. And maybe if you're listening to this, you're going to start seeing all these Instagrams and TikToks around signs and symbols. Because we're not alone, right? There's a brilliant, and I must say, and I'll put it in the show notes, Dr. Tara Stewart. She's been interviewed by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. She is a medical doctor, and she's some amazing book, but also her interviews. I find if I don't have time to go through an audiobook, I'll just get her interviews or anybody's interviews on the book that they've launched. And Dr. Tara Stewart is definitely worth a listen to. She lost her husband quite young, and she, again, a medic, very scientific background. She started noticing all these signs, and she has done a shit ton of research on the science behind signs and meaning making and our intelligence, and knowing that there's more to this universe than what we can see and experience. And I think it's really wonderful coming from a doctor who has, she would have admitted herself, at quite a logical left brain. So highly recommend that episode, Dr. Tara Stewart and Rangan Chatterjee. Live More, Live Better, I think his podcast is called, which is brilliant. Give me him any day over the likes of Stephen Bartlett or any of the kind of bullshitty clickbait shit that's gone into podcasts nowadays, sadly. She is really, really well worth it. This whole idea of quantum physics, right? The observer effect. This is the other science behind this. It is whatever, paying attention to whatever we are focusing on, we see more of, and it's the act of paying attention is get what is observed. So again, come back to the red car, the pregnant woman. Coherence is even more powerful than just attention alone, because we will see things, but it has no meaning behind it. Whereas coherence starts bringing in those really symbolic messages from maybe the other side, maybe, something that you really, really, really need to hold on to. If it's hope, that there's something else more that's coming for you. So, this idea that your interception, so that moment of intercepting your current day thinking, that it wakes you up to the reality and you start reading what's going on in your body. Like, does your heart flutter a little bit more? Do you get more excited? Does your pulse go up? Do you sweat a little bit more? Or are you really calm and grounded? That level of unease, like I definitely, in my latter part, there was one building, that one of the companies I worked for a number of years, and everyone in that building got sick. Like, all the burnout happened in that building, didn't happen in the other building, even it was the same company, was split between two buildings. And I always felt something off in one of the buildings, and I had a strong preference for staying in the other building, because my gut was like, I don't know what happened in the building of this building, but like there's something off. And now, for the skeptics listening to this, you're like, Norma, you've absolutely lost it. But my body is really, really, really smart when I listen to it. Um, and this is somebody who's gotten well from being really, really sick. So I really appreciate the wisdom within my body when I listen. So I do trust it when I'm in spaces, like when I knew when I got this apartment, the minute I walked in, even though it had been rented for 35 years and it was really grotty and it was covered in smoke and grime and it was absolute kip, I also knew, I was like, this is absolutely where I'm meant to be. This place that I'm sitting in now, 8 years later, which I think I went to see it like 9 years ago. I just had a knowing, right? My body was like, oh, it feels good. Oh, the light here is good. Oh, I get to see the two towers. Oh, I get to see Hoth and Dunleary. And oh my God, the view here is incredible. I get to see the sea every day. So it's always this kind of knowing, right? Um, and when we're in coherence, we're sharpening that more and more. It's like sharpening the pencil, really getting into a space of noticing. So when you are somebody who's like high performer and you're in a really busy system, maybe you have a really, really busy job, and you start subscribing to the rules of belonging, that you start ignoring your own intuition. You start, because that isn't welcome, or your observation of something, a really, really obvious sign, or this thing that keeps happening that is no longer a coincidence, that you're like, oh my God, this is more than a synchronicity. Like, this is like trouble ahead. Like, alert, alert. Um, Actually, I think Baywatch in France was called Alerte à Malibu. I remember years ago, as a on a French exchange, recognizing that Baywatch was something, called Alerte Malibu. So, what is your alert system telling you that you're not noticing, because you are afraid to bring it up, because it might mean that you're no longer loyal to the system that you want to perform and do really well in. So, what is it telling you? So, I think as we move into the latter part of this podcast, the thing that I'd love to share most with you is how, where the years that I didn't notice and didn't take care, and didn't notice the signs, to what I'm doing now, in particular right now in this moment, where I'm much more grounded than I have been even at the start of the year, because I have a little bit more time at the moment, that it is like when I see swim, because you've no phones, you can't tell. This I love about it, or being in a sauna. You start to observe more. Actually, my friend talk about coherent moments, or really, really serendipitous moments. I was in a sauna with my really good friend, and we got chatting with three other people. It was at night time. It was really, really cool. It was like, oh my God, I don't need a bar. I just need a sauna on a Friday night. And we were swimming in the dark, and we were with these three people, and we got chatting to them, and they were like, oh, we're training in constellations. And myself and my friend laughed, because we were both trained in constellations. So I think there might have been 8 people in the sauna, and out of the 8, 5 of us were constellators, 3 of them family, well, actually, my friend is also a family constellator. She doesn't really use it anymore. But all of us were trained in this field energy, trained in the ability to read um, the unseen. And it was all in different contexts. I was the only one that does it at an organizational level and a work context, but it's the same ultimate way in. So, and that was a night that I had been in the sea, and the talk about electromagnetic field from the sea, right? The sea has its own body, its own system. Um, so the more present I am in these moments, the more of these absolute serendipitous moments and happens, um this is not cliche, this is not, a wellness tick the box thing. This is when, like, your nervous system, and this weekend, like, I don't know, I'd still, being ex tech and everything, I still really do value, even though I'd love to do some holidays soon. I'm going to put away the Fitbit for a little bit, but my Fitbit this weekend rated a really, really high heart rate variability, which is a sign of wellness, sign of lowering stress. And I felt really good this weekend. Um, and I had loads of signs, like loads. My God, I was at my friend's house yesterday morning, and she didn't know anything about the ladybirds. The first thing I saw when I went in was this massive ladybird teddy bear that her son had. And she ran out after me after I left, and she goes, "My slipper even has a ladybird as well." So yeah, it's it's just being in that really, really good place that you start seeing things. Also, I started following with Mary Kennedy. And I know she's just doing her last version of it, but she follows the Celtic wheel, the Celtic calendar. And the more in touch I was and tuned with the seasons, things started to shift and change as well. That it's the seasonality of your presence, right? So we're coming into more light, we've more energy. Um, so we have to work harder at grounding, whereas slow time, during the winter, everything is slower, or should be, even though our world isn't. That we are noticing the micro changes in light, when it starts coming in first. Um, the idea, the one thing that I would really, really, really encourage you to do this summer is get bored. Get really bored. The thing that, when we were young, Mom, I'm bored. You never hear kids say that nowadays, because they have their devices in their hands. But us as adults, as humans, like, we really, really, really need to get bored. Um, and it's when we're bored and we're breathing, then pay attention. Like, even don't even have a book, just I love watching people watching, like, absolutely love it. So, like, what do you notice when you're bored? Like, where does your magpie show up? What's your ladybird? Where do they start showing up when you get bored? So that's your challenge. If you've listened to this podcast and you've got this far, and you've listened to the whole thing, I challenge you, make time to be bored, and check your loyalty to being busy that's getting in your way. That productivity or being busy is like a good thing. Be bored for a little bit. Like, that is your number one job, is to do nothing. Um, just coming towards the latter part of this podcast, I want you to start reflecting on, if you have lost anyone, what are the signs and seen. I haven't even mentioned the white feather. That used to be my early years of my mum passing. I see white feathers everywhere. I still see them. Not as many. I'm seeing more ladybirds than I'm seeing white feathers. But that was her sign when she passed first. So what do you notice when you see a white feather? What's the thing to you? Um, another one, and I definitely have come across this one. Oh my God, I like, my intuition is off the charts around smell. Um, what are the smells that you're noticing? Um, like, I can smell when there's poor mental health in an area. Um, like, it's a really damp smell for me, and I really, really alerts my nervous system, and I really struggle with it. So, like, what are your smells? I've also noticed, like, rose smells where there's absolutely no roses indoors. And so smells are really, really ones to observe as well. Not just what you're seeing. So what other senses are you noticing in these signs? Also, it's about noticing. Oftentimes we're only noticing, like, maybe a parent who's passed, or a grandparent, or an aunt, or an uncle. In true systemic work, we look at 7 generations. Um, this past weekend, because the 1926 census is out, I've spent a good bit of time along with my cousins. We've been looking at our great grandfather, great great grandfather. The 1901 census is also available, and what was going on for them in their lives, and what was happening on my mother's side in particular. We've discovered some hilarious things where we always thought our grandfather was from Kilkenny. It turns out he was born in Laois. And I have a load of cousins who live in Laois who always thought like all their ancestors came from Kilkenny. So there's been great slagging. But in some of the work I do, I've done a lot of work with people who work through the whole matriarchal line, which goes back 7 generations. And each of those women have information for you, because you are the absolute light of their survival. They never, in particular, if you're going back, like when we do 7 generations, it's hitting Irish famine. Um, they never thought 7 generations later somebody would be alive, in living with their lines, the epigenetics of them. So what information could they have? Not just your direct mother, father, but also great grandparents, great great grandparents, and beyond, right? Um, in some of my work, we look at the next 7 generations after us. They also have information. So we are in the middle of 14 generations, and each have something valid to share with us. So one of the things is looking at this idea of the thin place. So in particular now in Beautana, but also again in Samhain at Halloween, can you do a ritual or something that calls in more from the beyond? Whether it's not about heaven or hell or anything like that, it's like there's other dimensions out there, of information that we, as a species, we can't even begin to know what that is. Our logical mind, it's quantum, it's absolutely out of this world, right? I'm not talking aliens necessarily, but who knows, right? um so grief definitely is a way in to some of this work. I think more and more people I work with that have experienced some form of deep grief, and it's not always the ones that have lost someone, they just feel more than others. I know some of my closest friends haven't lost a parent or a sibling, but they are really, really attuned to grief, and get it. So it's not that you've lost somebody, but that the heart is the organ of grief. Like heartbreak is an actual thing. Like people die of heartbreak. So knowing what the heart might need now, if you have gone through a loss, um, and even when it's not comfortable, like so many people change their lives after they've lost somebody. I'm a perfect example of that. And whether it was the loss of my mother, the loss of my womb, that's where it was like something's got to give. Like there has to be more meaning and signs and experiences to this world. So just noticing that, it's, if you're somebody who hasn't had signs before and you're shaming yourself into saying, God, why am I noticing them? I'm missing them. Just notice how you might be really, 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 and I say this with great compassion because you're so similar to the world. Maybe you're spending a lot of time in your head and you're really valuing your mind, whereas this episode is about including your heart and gut intelligence, and your heart in particular. How could you sit with your heart and in your heart more often, if this is something you want to access, but not to shame yourself to where you are right now, because that would be, the heart would never do that. The heart doesn't. So much of the shame lives in our head, because it's partly beliefs, whereas the heart is all loving and all encompassing. So moving into that space more and more is that true place of compassion. um the more present you are, the more in your heart, the more that you are with your heartbeat. So if it's not breath work, what is the thing? It could be knitting, it could be painting, it could be gardening, getting out of your head, doing something that brings you more and more into that place. That is where your outer world starts changing, and how you experience it in your inner world starts changing. This Again, this isn't woo-woo. This is not out there. This is like basic fundamental way of being. And you're changing your electromagnetic waves and the physics of your being by being present. So that's what you're being asked. So this is like that part of that presence isn't passive. Like it's not like, oh, I'm just going to lie down on the couch and, look at the sky, because you probably fall asleep because you're tired. This is about just sitting in it. That's very active, active listening, active presence like that. You'll be burning calories. I'm telling you, you will. Well, if you want to measure it, get out your Whoop or your Fitbit, because you will, Um, so, some actions that I'd love to leave you with after this lengthy podcast episode. Some actions that to take away, to see more of these signs, to have these serendipitous moments, to know that your heart has an intelligence more than any AI machine can ever have, because intelligence lives in the heart, not always the mind. So, put down your phone. Definitely turn off social media. I have been using the brick. I don't have it there with me, but it's this little near field communication technology where you tap it, just like the Leap card or Oyster card. You tap your phone and it locks all my social medias. For certain, it's locked now. Currently, it's 6 p.m. here, and I haven't had access to it since lunchtime, so I can focus on deep work. I mightn't tap it again. I'm off to the gym later, or actually, no, I'm going to yoga after this. And I'll tap it for maybe untap it for half an hour later on. And it's about literally putting the phone away, just turning the phone off. And if you do it when you're out in nature, better again, right? Just having those moments where there's nothing interfering. Um, One of the coherent tools I didn't talk about when we did the coherent breath is a track on Spotify called The Two Bells. I will put it here in the show notes, and it is a bell ding for breathing in and a bell dong for breathing out. So ding dong. And it can just train the mind to do the coherent breathing, and it can help you sleep. It can help you be present. I think it's a half an hour track you can put on repeat if you need sound throughout the night. For those that are struggle with sleep, it is brilliant and is probably the most cathartic thing you're going to do. And that will really help on the heart coherence. Write down your signs. Write down the thing that you're noticing the most. Maybe it's numbers. I didn't even get into the 111s, the angel numbers. Um, Maybe you're seeing something very, very frequently. Write it down. Write down where you're seeing it, what context you're seeing it. I know some people see car regs. Some people are very numeric. They see numbers. I see a lot of angel numbers. In particular, 444s. And I am just about to enter into my fourth year in numerology, which has its own symbolism. So probably this time next year I'll see lots of fives, or what adds up to fives. So I can see 222 or 22, which adds to 4. So the numbers thing as well, just notice what they are, do a little bit of research. But the meaning that online might attach might not be the meaning you need. Start using your own heart intelligence that really brings in that meaning, that knows better than any AI tool or Google to know what it means to you, because only you can attach that true intelligence and meaning. So I wish for your summer to, if you are so inclined and you have really enjoyed this episode, what are the signs that you need to see and from whom? And what information would really help you maybe in this next phase of life? And it could be as simple as the sign reminding you that you're doing a great job and you're already enough. And you don't need to do anymore. You just need to be with yourself, all of yourself, wounds and all, that you are more whole than you realize. And that this has a way of reminding you that you're cared for, you're loved, the world is abundant, everything is working out for you in divine order and divine timing. Sometimes that's enough to live in your heart and know that your heart has that wisdom. And if it is a case that your heart is telling you it's time, something needs to change, I'm here. Look, I offer 30-minute free connection calls. If you want to explore the type of work that I do, that is always there as an offer for you as listeners. And I am always just delighted when you tell me. And please, if you see lots of signs and you're experiencing serendipitous moments or what you consider a coincidence, or your heart is changing in its makeup, do drop me a message, put a comment on this podcast, send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn. You'll find my email on normaokelly.com. I'd love to hear in particular from this episode what your experiences are, what's been happening in particular, any loved ones that have passed, and what signs and symbols they send you, whether it's numbers, feathers, or like me, ladybirds, robins, and also, yeah, traditional things that would have been noticed in your family that maybe you're experiencing now. So ultimately, the mind will try and rationalize this stuff, but you'll know. Your heart always knows. Your heart has this way of knowing that everything is going to be okay. Um, and all along, your heart is your first organ. It's been waiting for you to come home. So, really have a wonderful sign filled few weeks. And please do let me know. Please share, review, tell me what's been going on, and share this podcast, please. I'd be so grateful if you could share it with some friends, whether it's privately or through your socials. I really, really, really appreciate you and taking the time to listen to this extra long special podcast. And thank you so much for all the love. Thank you so much for listening and staying with this extra long episode. If you liked this episode, please check out my other long list of episodes. There's 50 in total. I have surpassed the 10,000 listens, and that has been thanks to you over these last few years. It is not recorded weekly. I record when my heart is ready to share some information that's burning in me, and this episode was one of them. And I would love to hear what other episodes you might like to hear, whether it's from my personal life or more about my coaching that could help you. Please do drop me a DM. But in the meantime, please share, like, and subscribe. I really, really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, and go gently. Take care of you and keep breathing.